Welcome to Stillworks and Brewing. My name is Randy, and this is a channel that's all about home distillation and brewing. So, what do we got going on today? Today we're going to talk about and check out ABV and Proof. Okay? But first things first. If you haven't done it yet, please do so. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything. Share us with your friends. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. And please leave a comment. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, so what we're going to get into is let's start off with ABV. ABV, of course, it stands for alcohol by volume, and it's usually stated in a percent form. Okay, now proof is a little bit different. Here in the United States, the way proof is read, it's 50%. Like say you have 50%, that'd be 100 proof. If you had 60%, it'd be 120 proof. It just doubles. I don't know why. It don't make much sense to me. Anyway, some of the history of proof is in the 16th century, the English was taxing alcohol at different rates. So if you had a lower proof, it was taxed different than alcohol that was taxed higher in a higher rate. Okay, they used to use what they called was the burn no burn test. So if you had gunpowder and you put lower proofed alcohol on it, it would not ignite. And if you put gunpowder, you put higher proof on it, and it would ignite. So then you know it was a better proof. Okay, and then by the end of the 17th century, they figured out specific gravity, and then they based on alcohol by that. Okay, here in the United States, the proof system was based on a percent, and like I said before, 50% alcohol was actually 100 proof. And today, most of your liquors and alcohol is sold by ABV. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of divide our system, or whatever you want to call it, into three main legs: the mash, the ferment, and the distill. Okay, and how we get the numbers. Now, these processes, they're touching each other and they're influencing each other, but they're not actually connected in any way. Well, I should say anyway, but they're not really connected. Okay, so let's start off with the mash. We are going to use, the tools that we're going to use is a very specific gravity hydrometer. Okay, so what the mash is that is where we're gathering sugars to ferment. Okay, and we might be getting them sugars in many different ways. If you're like, say you're making a bourbon, you're going to get them from corn and grain and such, and you're going to have to convert the starches over into fermentable sugars. Okay, if you're doing like a rum where you're using molasses and brown sugar and all that, it's already into a sugar, so you'll go that way. So whatever the case may be, however you get your sugars, you might be doing a sugar wash just with table sugar. But you need to be able to measure the specific gravity in that mash to know where you're at. This is one of the most important data points that you're going to get is, and you have to do it. You don't have to, but very, very important. It's going to be used on down the line. So let's say we're making just to make it simple, we're doing a sugar wash. Okay. So say we add whatever amounts our recipe is into our mash. Let's just say we come up with an SG or an OG, original starting gravity, original gravity, same thing. Let's just for say we got a 1.090. Okay, so with that being said, most of your hydrometers, I don't think all, but every one I have, they have a triple scale on it. Okay, and one of the scales is potential alcohol. So with that being said, if we look at 090, it's saying that we're going to have about 12%. That's if yeast eats all the sugar that we put in there. Okay, that's the if. Okay, so let's say that's 12%. Okay, that's very cool. All right. So with that, that's about it on that one. Let's move over to ferment. All right. So in the ferment, once we introduce the yeast, say the yeast eats everything that we put in there, and it did its job. Okay, so we can take the SG hydrometer again and measure it and say we get 1.000. That means we know for a fact that fermentation is done. Okay, it ate every available sugar that's in there. Okay, so now we can start to figure out ABV, alcohol by volume. Okay, and how we do that, the mathematical formula is, we write this down, SG minus FG, final gravity, all right, times 131.25. Okay, very important. Remember that. See, that's where the SG start to come. You see that? Okay. So, in our case, okay, so since we started with 1.090 minus 1.090 minus 1.000 equals 0.090 times 131.25 equals 11.81. Let's just call it 12%. Okay? So that is our ABV, alcohol by volume. Alright? So now the next data point you can use is, okay, so usually I make 6-gallon matches, and I asked Siri on my phone, I said, what is 12% of 12% of 6 gallons in quarts? And she told me that it was 2.88 quarts. Now we all know that we are not going to we're not going to take out pure alcohol. So, but just for conversation period, is we're going to get around 3 quarts, right around, of distillate. Okay. Okay. So that's going to finish up the ferment. So now we know how much in our fermenter, how much of that is basically alcohol. All right. So let's move on over to distill. All right. Okay, now here's where I get a little bit messed up myself, is I think the term proof, we're using all ABV for everything else, right? Why do we want to throw proof into the mix? I say, let's get rid of, stop using that. It's just my opinion. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people out there, oh, you can't do that. Well, like I've said in the past, we're home distillers, we can do what we want. So I think I'm going to stop using the term proof because it gets me confused. Okay, let's do everything in ABV. I mean, we have scientific ways of measuring stuff now. If you want to go to it, you can there's calculators out there that you can get it down to the T if you really need to. So let's go and move on to the distill side. All right. So we're going to do that in ABV. Right? Alright. First thing you got to remember. Let me say it again. First thing you need to remember. A still makes no alcohol. It's not. It don't make an ounce. There's only one spot in this whole process that makes alcohol. Right? Now, if you don't have sugar, this can't work. But this don't make no alcohol. This don't make no alcohol. The only thing that makes alcohol is here. that little old yeast guy, okay? He does a fine job at it too. Okay, so anyway, let's get back at it. So, the only thing this still is a tool to separate the alcohol. You know, when you put all your fermented mash into the still, it separates the alcohol from the water and the flavorings and all that. Now, it will not, depending on your still and your process, if you're running it reflux or if you're running it a pot still mode, it's going to depend. I mean, if you're running, like, say, pot still, most of the time, let's just say you'll start off at 140 proof and run it all the way through. Ah! I said it, didn't I? So, let me rephrase that. Let's say you start off at 70% alcohol coming off your still, and you run that the whole way through. Well, that's what, 30%? 30% of it's going to be water, and it's going to be the flavorings that you got in the mash. And hey, that's what we're after anyway. We all love flavor, don't we? Now, if you're making a neutral spirit and you're coming off at let's say 80-85%, okay, a lot of your flavorings, there will be no flavorings there, so you're mainly running 80% or 85 or 90%. You're running what, only 10% of that going to be water, so the flavorings is going to be very, very low, but you're making a neutral spirit, so that's what you want. So let me remind you, still does not make alcohol. I've had questions of, well, I want a higher ABV coming off the still. You remember that time. I'll just put more sugar in. That don't necessarily work, because still don't make alcohol. All the still does is separate these two. It separates the alcohol from the water and other such things that are in that still pot. Okay? Now, just the other thing I want to show you is, once we get over here, we do not use this hydrometer anymore. Woo! We are going to use, they call it a proof and trails hydrometer. Alright? Now, it's going to have two scales on it. It's going to have a proof scale, and it's going to have a trail of, they call it trailies. Okay, it goes from 100 proof to 0 to 100%. Okay, see where them two words get all mixed up? That's what I don't like. So that's how you're going to measure what your distillate's coming off at, is a percent of alcohol that you're getting. Okay. Where was I? Okay, so like I said, the still, I mean, that's your final product right there. So with all that being said, what can we change in this process? And what can we change? What influences can we have? Well, let's start back here at the bash. We can change a few different things. The ingredients, okay? So we can change the amounts, what kind of flavors we have in that, okay? And that's basically all we do. Now the ferment, we can change temperature, we can change the style of the yeast, the kind of yeast we're using, the time, and we can change that. Is that about it? I think that's about it, pretty much. And then the still is, you can change how fast you're running it, all your temperatures, when you start collecting and when you can end collecting, and the taste and all that. So we can change all that there. Okay, so I hope I didn't confuse you any more than I'm confused. It's kind of a simple, maybe, way of looking at things. I mean, if you wanted to really get in depth in any of this process, you can go in as deep as you want, and that's completely up to you. I mean, you can really get in depth with all these processes. I just wanted to touch the very tip top of it, and to try to explain things that I've had trouble with or questions I've got. So in conclusion, I think the biggest thing is to remember that I'm going to do is I'm throwing proof out. I'm going to try to stick with just ABV to help keep things simple in my mind. I hope that you got a little bit out of this. If you only got one thing, that I did my job right. Last thing to say is thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time. Oh, and by the way, happy holidays to everybody. Thanks for all the great comments. Next year, it's going to be a fantastic year. Alright, so we'll see you next time.